So, welcome everybody. It is episode 17, and I am here with Gary Benoit, all the way from Alberta, Canada. We are so thrilled to be with you. My name is Maeve Langford, transformational coach here in Ireland. So you know a little bit about both of us now, but just to remind you, Gary is a recently retired first responder. He is an author, a speaker, and a coach, author of the fabulous Call for Service. So you can get his book on Amazon on both sides of the Atlantic and probably in
Mhm.
all good booksellers in the Edmonton area. Um, so yeah, and today we are with you to talk about the whole topic of masterminding and mastermind groups. So one of the things we talk about vision and transformation all the time, and one of the things that can really accelerate our growth and accelerate our achievement of our vision is to be part of a masterminding community. So
For sure. You
wanted
know,
to have this as one of our topics. So yes,
it
shoot.
it's one of those things where you think about a mastermind group, and I've heard about that before I was really involved in this work, and I didn't truly understand what it meant. Like honestly, right? Like I really didn't understand what it meant. I think it's what's really key. I think that we're talking about it because what a great tool to add to your things to do or toolbox of transformation, right? And truthfully, masterminding is just really, when you really think about it, it's about having a group of people that support and are dedicated to growth, transformation, and supporting and being there in the same energy and with as much belief in where we're going as the next
Yeah.
person,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Exactly. And I think it's really interesting. I mean, for anybody in North America, like masterminding, I think the term was coined by Napoleon Hill, but he was
Hmm.
studying some of the, I suppose early 20th century, and yes, I suppose capitalism and some of the early success names, but Henry Ford and Edison, people like that talked about how their success catapulted after they started to engage with masterminding partners.
Right.
So I think I think it's not just about masterminding as an activity as much as, or at least it's as important about who you're doing that with,
I think you're
right?
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on what makes a good mastermind partner?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think you got to have, I think it's about believing in what you're doing and having as much uh, belief in the next person and being able to support them in that. We talk about where we're going all the time, right? We talk about our vision. We try to live from that vision piece. We try to live from the you know the design we have and where we're going. I think it's really important to know that if you have people that aren't in that same, or they're kind of half committed, or they're kind of committed, right, to that growth or that transformation, maybe that's not the best person to have in your group. And and it really is about just taking stock of where you're at in your journey and what you're looking to gain from it too, right? Because it's about you and it's about the next person. It's about that group of people. um you know the belief piece is really important. The dedication to growth is really, really important,
Yeah.
right? The dedication to actually want to change, because sometimes we get together and it's more about a I've had some where it's just been more like a bitching session, right? You've had some groups together and they come in, all they do is they want to complain about what's not going right.
Yeah, we can probably all have that
Right?
formal or informal. We've all been there.
Correct,
Yeah.
right? And so like I think that sometimes, don't get me wrong, there's moments when you have to take, maybe there's a moment when you take a little bit of, if you're disappointed with something or things didn't work out the way you hoped they would, or they weren't going as fast as they were. I think we have to make appointment with that. I think we have to make sure we kind of move through that. But I don't think it's good to sit in that group every week or every whatever 2 weeks, whatever that is, and be in that energy. I think it changes your trajectory. I think it slows you down in the long run,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, one of the key characteristics would be somebody who is as vision oriented
Hmm.
and as committed to that. I mean, they could be working on something completely different. I think those early 20th century guys were probably all, it was all industry based and what they wanted to create professionally, but it doesn't have to be about a professional goal, I would say, but definitely the person has to be as focused and committed to something they want to change in their lives as everybody else in the group.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's really important as well is that, and it's okay if members of the group have known each other for a while,
Mhm.
but they need to be more interested in who you're becoming, who each member of the group is becoming, and not too stuck in relating to the person as the person they've been up until now or the person they are currently. it's
Mhm.
it's about who you're becoming,
Mhm.
and being able to hold that vision, especially when, we talked about this in the context of supporting us, and last time we were together, or maybe the episode before, we were talking about, the 3 feet from gold, and we can feel, it's not happening, it's not worth it, I'm not good enough, or I'm not able. In those moments, your mastermind partners need to be people who can say to you, you're bigger than this.
Mhm.
You can think better than that, you're
Mhm.
capable of more than that. So we really need to be judicious, I think, in the people we invite into that space, especially for those moments.
I agree. And it's, I've often sometimes thought about this in the way of this is that um, I join a group sometimes for my own benefit, right? Like I need some sort of support, or I need, right. But what ultimately is that I'm also there for their benefit. I'm there to support them too, right? So be their cheerleader, be that other side of the coin, right? When they're in that moment. Because I think it's not about just one person. It's about the cohesion of that for each other, right? The reciprocation of those moments, right? And the
Yeah,
ability and to be free giving of that advice and time, and knowing that by doing this, you're increasing the abundance in your own life by increasing abundance in someone else's life too, right? So
sure.
because it's all about that flow, right? It's inside of
Yeah.
that group, right? You think about the flow of the energy exchange, and it should be when you leave there, you should feel energized and uplifted,
Yes.
truthfully.
Yeah.
And so, like, because oftentimes you think, oh, this is gonna be good for me, and I think I can learn something, but you're also being able to help others learn other things too. And I think that's so key when you're deciding on a mastermind group, who you're gonna pick, right?
Hmm.
Who are you gonna align yourself with? And really, if you're inside of this work, and if you're brand new to it, this might be a new concept, but the idea that you surround yourself with good people, right? And I think it starts really truthfully with understanding who's currently in your life, who elevates you,
Yeah.
and who doesn't.
Yeah.
Right? Because I mean, and sometimes you're the person that doesn't. Maybe you're the person that needs to change a little bit to change that energy or whatever that looks like, right? But like ultimately, surrounding yourself with really good people is one piece of it. But then if you're specifically looking at a mastermind group, who are the best fit for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And and I think some of where you're going with this is this idea that it's not just about what I can get from the
Hmm.
others in the group, but like what am I bringing as well? And I would say if part of what makes a good mastermind partner is that you want to create change in your life, that you're bringing that, but it is also about you bring ideas, resources, you might be able to make an introduction for somebody, so it like there is an element of kind of all the positives of networking as well can play out between good mastermind
Hmm.
partners.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, it's that willingness to share a resource, or
Hmm.
say, have you heard this podcast, or
Yes.
have you read this great book, and you share that with each other, and you bring, and I think actually some formal masterminding groups, they actually build in a time whereby everybody brings something to the meeting that
Right.
can be physical, but it might be a recommendation or a suggestion, or
Hmm.
have you read, or whatever, and that can be a really good way to go in terms of, again, if everybody's committed to growth, these are all ideas and suggestions and ways of just opening up our minds and increasing our awareness.
Hmm. For sure. And the I love what you said there about the being that person of increase, or bringing that energy to that group. It's I think that's one of the more key elements when you show up there. Be willing to be open with your vision. Be open with
Hmm.
where you want to go, and then be willing to share the things that have worked for you. Like if you're experiencing any type of success or even if it's a little bit of success, if something's worked for you, then be able to share that openly for someone
Yeah,
else, right? Because I think that that openness is really important because we are, once again, this all comes back to the idea that we're connecting with the infinite in that moment, and we're so greater than our circumstances and our conditions in that moment, and we're able to share and see that growth and that energy exchange, right? And I come back to the energy piece of it because I think that the group can create such great energy and
yeah.
such, and you amplify the ability to find a different result. Maybe you come up with a different question. Maybe you find a different. We've said that. What kind of questions are you asking? Right. The quality of your
Yeah.
life is determined by the quality of questions that you ask. So if you have a different question, maybe you get a different result. And inside that group, maybe that's what comes out of that question and a different idea. Right. So
Yeah.
I think it's such a key element to just growing your success. And when we talk about people, you talked about an inventory of people.
Hmm.
Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I can. And I want to acknowledge up front this, I didn't discover this on my own. This comes from the work of a woman called Claire Zammit. She's a great coach and speaker in the States. And she talks about power partners, which again are kind of like what we would say in our language, Gary, partners in believing.
Hmm.
And again, they're essentially what I think are the type of people who make up great mastermind group members as well. So she works exclusively with women, but I think that what she talks about in this inventory for men and women, it will apply and be equally useful. So she says if you imagine going through an inventory of the people in your life at the moment. So for any of you listening today, if you're thinking, okay, well, who could be a good mastermind partner for me? The first people that we'll often think of are people that we know already. So, people, friends and family members, and they've maybe known us a long time. And they may be very nice people and very encouraging people, but on one level, they're people who've known us for a long time are kind of invested in knowing us how we've been up until now. And they're not always people who are really into us changing, or maybe not necessarily hugely interested in their own change and growth. So they won't always be great mastermind group partners. There's a comfort in the relationship. It's not about growth. It's about familiarity and comfort. And this isn't exclusive. When I talk about this with my own clients, I always say my dad was one of my biggest champions and partners in believing. I mean, he's gone a long time now, but if ever I needed somebody to say, you've got this, you can do anything, be anything, have anything, he was always somebody I could go to for that. So I'm not discounting family members as
Hmm.
potential mastermind group members, but just raising a flag for us when we're going through this kind of inventory. And then the second type of person, again, they could be longtime acquaintances or family members, or newer, it doesn't matter. They might be interested in personal growth, they might be interested in transformation, they might have come to some events with you, or you might have met them at those types of events, but they're not as committed as you to
Hmm.
actually committing to a vision, even having a vision, and kind of deciding for their own growth and their own transformation. And again, you can certainly have great conversations with these people. I'm not saying that we can't be friends and be partners in believing for them, but they mightn't be great partners in believing for us if they haven't decided that they're committing to growth, and you or I or any of you listening have made that commitment. So again, it's just to kind of think about that. Sometimes this kind of person in the second category I'm talking about, they might find you very inspiring, and they might be encouraged to be around you for that purpose. And I would say, be that role model and that person of inspiration, and person in believing in their lives, offer that to them, but they probably aren't going to be mastermind partners for us. And then the third kind of category or grouping is people who are as committed as you to growth, and I would say who in the work we do, and those of you listening to this podcast, you probably want people who are very transformation oriented, so they see us in the highest potentiality,
Hmm.
and they won't join they and so again, like, and we try to acknowledge this when we're together, don't we? That, like, shit happens. Like, we can
Yeah.
have bad days, we can have upsetting times, we will have setbacks, and we don't want to do, sometimes in our language we say a spiritual bypass on that. We like, the hurt is there, but our mastermind partners, they'll be able to empathize and acknowledge the hurt, but they won't allow us to be defeated by that,
Yeah. They won't make
and
agreement.
they won't make agreement with it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they definitely won't let us stay there too long.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You talked the first point there about the people that knew you or know you. It's such an interesting statement. When I look back and I can reflect on my growth over the last, well, let's say since 2010, it really, when I started to make my differences in my life and the people that knew me back then, I would be leaning because that's who I knew at the time. I didn't really have other
Of
people to
course.
to lean on in that moment. But when I look back on it, I mean, they weren't the right people to lean on because they truthfully didn't want me to change. They just liked me the way I was, right? And they weren't
Yeah.
right. And not that they didn't want me to succeed. They weren't like malicious or trying to be hurtful to me in any way, shape, or form. It was just that they didn't understand it in the way that I was understanding it. And
Yeah.
and so for them, that change is scary, right? I mean, come from a background of law enforcement. Unfortunately, police officers are afraid of change. They don't like change. They hear change and they get all weirded out about it. Even though the change could be for the better, they just have this thing where they're really comfortable in what they know.
And Gary, I think we're all a bit like that
Maybe
on one
we are. And maybe
level.
we are,
Yeah,
right?
it's kind of a human
Yeah.
thing.
And and so like in the beginning when that was there, like maybe you're in the beginning too. And you need some people to lean on, and that's who you're picking right now. And that's great. That's fine. Use those people, but understand that you can be open to designing or calling in other people, right? So
Yeah.
and that was my awareness piece back then, was just to invite new relationships,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then those new relationships then become who you would start to kind of collaborate with a little bit more.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people that were originally in my first circle are no longer part of this circle because they weren't committed, right? They weren't committed to even changing a little bit. They weren't even deciding for that, right? So, but that's okay for me. I mean, don't, I still love them. I think they're great people. They're still doing great things. It's just that they're not where I'm going, right?
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so, it doesn't matter where you are in this journey. If you've been doing this for 20 years or you've been doing it for two months, it doesn't matter. Just know that things will change and evolve over time. And as you call in, as you're open to new opportunities and new people, they'll be presented to you when you're ready to work with those people. Um,
I'm mindful of a phrase that we use, when the student is ready, the
yeah,
teacher appears, and teachers show up in very many
correct.
guises,
Yeah,
um, but again, when we're ready to step into our next phase of growth, for sure, there will be people, like you said, if we're open to it, there will be people will come into our circle in some
yeah,
way that can support us with
yeah,
that.
for sure.
Yeah.
And and you talked also, the other thing that you talked about that really struck with me is just a few minutes ago is you could be that person of inspiration. You could be like maybe you do this, for 3 or 4 years or 5 years, and you're doing some good things, and that person that's brand new sees you and has that as attracted to that energy of you, right?
Mhm.
And I love that because like, we never know who we're going to be influencing along the way because truthfully, we're all leaders inside of this. We're all leaders in society. We're all leaders in our own communities because as we grow and as we continue to evolve and become better people, we improve the world around us essentially,
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
so those people can attach it, and I think it's great to be that leader, and don't dismiss just because they may be in a different place. Like, be that person that they can lean on, and it's okay,
Yeah,
right? It's okay for
yeah,
that. I think it's great because they got to
absolutely.
get some like that could elevate them to a whole different level too, right? So be that person. I
Yeah.
love that. I think that's so good.
Yeah, and for all of us listening today, like, if you're thinking, and you're looking around your circle and kind of saying, well, that teacher isn't here at the minute, I'd love that person to appear. The fastest way you can influence that happening is to be that person for somebody else, because the very act of kind of stepping into that puts you on that frequency.
Yeah,
And then it starts to attract in more people who will be that for you.
right.
So yeah,
And
we
then
can really influence that.
the other thing I want to bring up is the idea that changing groups. So sometimes people get into a group,
Hmm.
they feel very comfortable there. They're good people, but they're not really serving maybe you or in the way you would love or whatever that looks like. Maybe they're not 100% in the same whatever. And you don't want to leave the group because you don't want to offend anybody.
Mm.
So what's the strategy around that? Because that often comes up in mastermind groups because it becomes a little bit
Yeah.
touchy sometimes when you have that. I would say it's not conflict, it's just a little discontent maybe.
Yeah, really interesting that you brought that one up, because I think that's something I'm kind of grappling with at the moment, and I'm not sure I have a perfect answer, but I have what I think is helping me in this moment is that it's not always about leaving. Okay, so like I think sometimes it might be about getting your need met from a new and different
Hmm.
group or mastermind group. You may still stay in that other group because you have stuff to offer. You can be a person of increase. You can contribute still in some way.
Hmm.
And but if you're not getting what you need in that space, to be okay with that, and just go get that someplace else. And I think sometimes, I think of this sometimes in friendship groups, or even like with a significant other. Like, there's no one place that we get all our needs met, right?
True.
No one person can meet all our needs. I mean,
Hmm.
on one level, we're kind of insatiable because we're constantly growing and adapting and progressing. So it's a bit like that, I think, with the mastermind group, that there'll be phases in our own growth and development, and there will be times when we outgrow,
Hmm.
and we need to get from someplace else. And the other thing, I suppose, sometimes maybe we do just need to go, right?
Hmm.
And there was a great phrase that someone said to me when I was teaching these ideas, actually. And she said, Maeve, people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And and I think the reason and the season, they change, and to make it okay for ourselves to say, this has had its season, or this, we got together, maybe there was, an initiative, or everybody had something that they wanted to achieve at the time, and we've kind of done that now, and just let it go. And what I say to my clients is just the same ease with which the leaf can fall off the tree in the
Hmm.
autumn. If we don't make a story about it, if we don't make drama about it, it can just, that thing, that activity, that group that you used to spend a lot of time with, it's evolved in its own way, and you've evolved in another direction, and there was no breakup or falling out or angst about it. It just all evolved in very natural ways.
Right. I think that's. Oh, excuse me. Pardon me. Oh, wait. Sorry about
Bless
that.
you.
I think it's really key to what you said there is super key to anybody who's in that moment where you're like, what's my next step, right? And I think that sometimes it's just about how to, just ease of grace and just sort of like that whole separation that's super super easy, right?
Yeah.
Or it's yeah, you know what, we're here, we're kind of this is still good, but I'm also looking at other ideas and other things, and
Yeah.
I've got other opportunities, and so I may be not here as much, or maybe that's, or whatever that looks like, right? In those actual moments.
Yeah.
And I think it's just about not making it right or wrong,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like it's not wrong, it's not bad, it's not
Oh,
right. And you're not trying to, you're not discounting what's happening inside the group. It's just like in this moment, my energies are being directed somewhere else. And
yeah.
so, yeah, I think that's really key, because I think that comes up a little bit, I think, with the groups, um, the couple that I've been a part of. Naturally, we've done our thing, like we come in together for a certain period of time, and it just naturally sort of like, okay, we're good now. Like we're at that point where, on off you go. We're
Yeah.
still in contact with each other. I still have people, I still talk to them, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But it's not like we're in that group for a purpose anymore. Like we're just kind of hanging out, you know.
Yeah. And I think, for any of you listening again, if you're a convener of any of those kind of groups, or if you've been the one who set it up, that willingness to just let people go, and they'll circle back around, if we're not kind of holding on tight, and kind of making people stay, or feel like they have to stay. I think that would be my experience, that there can just be an ease, and a ebbing and flowing, and a circulation of the good here, um that we don't have to control it. I think
Yeah,
that's the word I'm looking
right.
for. We don't have to control it, and
Yeah,
just let it be. And as I say, there's the sun rises again, and
for
the
sure.
seasons come round again,
Yeah,
and if our paths are still to cross, they will.
right. And the thing about that too is that ebb and flow, if you hold it with that open hand, and you're allowing the flow of that group to sort of evolve. You open the door. If someone is moving on to some other thing, you've opened the door now to a new opportunity to someone else,
Yeah, exactly.
right? And
Great.
so,
Yeah,
and
okay.
you never know who's going to be attracted inside that particular group, or inside that particular moment. That's going to elevate you or elevate somebody else inside the group to a different spot, right? And so, with the ebb and the flow of all of that, just know deep down, even though you feel maybe a little sad, or about something,
Yeah,
you really
yeah,
like someone. Oh, I don't really want them to leave because I don't really like that person, or whatever that
yeah,
looks like. But you're opening the door now to a new opportunity, a new person to really bring some different value, some other things, right? Because once again, we may be in different careers and have different visions, but offer such a great resource for each other,
yeah,
right? Even
yeah,
though we're
absolutely.
different
Absolutely.
tracks.
Absolutely.
Now,
And
my next thing, and last thing I want to kind of talk about is in a mastermind group. This is what kind of me just dropped in a minute ago, is that accountability piece.
mhm.
So, is there, in your opinion, is there a difference between accountability groups and mastermind groups?
Well, I think we can all have accountability bodies, and they're not necessarily mastermind partners at the same time. That can just be somebody that you have a commitment, you're going to do something by a certain day, and you either do or you don't. But the idea is that, if you've committed to them, you're going to be accountable. And it's a great way to go. I mean, I know myself with my swimming and things at the moment, if I've said to someone, I'll meet you, I'll be way less likely to duck out of that than if it's
Right.
just me and my schedule. So accountability partners definitely are different, or can be, but I think it is one of the benefits of a mastermind group, that it creates a kind of accountability, even if it's not every week saying, did you do what you said you were going to do? But there is this kind of reporting in, isn't there? And this is where I'm
Hmm.
at, this is where I'm going. So, yeah. And like sometimes people talk about action learning sets, which can be a kind of mastermind group as well, I think. And that is very much about, what's the action you're going to
Right.
take, and then you report back next time. So, I think mastermind groups are more than accountability groups, but I absolutely think they can
So
encompass that.
they can serve that as well.
Yeah.
And
Does
then
would you have the same
I think,
thoughts about that?
I mean, my mastermind groups will honestly, like, they are a piece of that accountability, because like you have to check in with them and see where you're at, right?
Yeah,
I've had separate accountability people in addition to that group, right?
sure. Sure.
And I think with mastermind groups, like we try to meet if when we're in a group and we're got a, especially when I got a goal or a project, that's kind of when I really fold myself into other people and see what they can do. That's kind of the idea. If I got a real goal or real project or something that I really want to get done, I think the mastermind group can really accelerate some of those ideas, right? And so I think that's what that's what I use mastermind groups for personally. That's what that's what I've used it for in the past. That's kind of my biggest focus for
Sure,
them.
sure.
Um, so there is an accountability piece inside of that. And we try to meet, once a week, right? That's kind of the
Sure.
frequency, like once a week, because like I think weekly is good. I think, I don't know if daily is necessary. Some people might feel it that way. Maybe it's
It sounds like a lot
a
to
daily
me.
check-in, but
Yeah.
that seems like a lot. And I think every 2 weeks is a little bit long. Like I think 2 weeks
Mm,
is just a little bit too much separation. Like,
yeah.
I think for me. So my recommendation would be like, that once a week kind of check in. It doesn't have to be a long meeting, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, however it takes to share and provide some ideas, whatever the goal is there. Um, but I also had that separate accountability people, like one or two
Mhm.
people that I was accountable to. Um,
Sure.
and that's only because I tend to get a little lazy, and I'm aware of that. Sometimes I get a little bit lazy with certain things. So the more accountable I am to more that those individuals, I find that I just more active in my
Yeah.
in my success and what I'm doing. So as we finish here, as we wrap up, is there any final thoughts or any things that you can share here now in the last few minutes for our listeners?
Yeah. So there are two things quickly. One is that you spoke, and I'm not sure we pull this out a whole lot. So I just want to come back to it. That when the idea of the mastermind, of course, is you have the collective resources of everybody in the group, but there's also this idea that when we're together to grow, that the infinite is part of that. So even if people aren't particularly spiritually minded, I know in the Christian tradition, and Gary, you and I both acknowledged we grew up in that tradition. But it's in the New Testament. There's a phrase from Jesus said, "When two or three are gathered in my name, I am there too."
Mhm.
And of course, this isn't about Catholicism or Christianity. I,
No.
I, I believe what he was kind of saying, when two or three are gathered to grow, to become, to transform, that infinite intelligence is there guiding that and part of
Right.
that. So just to remind ourselves again, when we talk about masterminds being a way of accelerating our growth, part of why that is that the flow of ideas, that we become almost channels for the divine or the infinite, or the universe, life, to flow ideas to us, channel
Right.
ideas to us,
Yeah.
way in a kind of organized way. So just to acknowledge that, I suppose that's part of what we're enabling when we step into a mastermind experience. And the other thing I would say, and I have had, I mean, we don't call each other mastermind partners, but I have had a friend that I get together with once a week, once a fortnight. We've been doing this for about 15 years, and I'm very proud of that.
That's nice.
But
Good.
one of the things that makes it really work is that this commitment to kind of equal time to both parties. And there've been times in our lives when either of us might have needed a bit more, and we've honored that. But in general, each time we meet, like if we're like, okay, we've got an hour today, it's like 30 minutes each. And this
Yeah.
is what I want help with, this is what you want help with. So I think, for especially if you're coming into a mastermind group or you're setting one up, this idea of, if there's four of us in the group and we're meeting for an hour, it's 15 minutes per person,
Yep.
and everybody gets their share of that time. Because I think that's one of the things that gets out of whack really quickly if
Yeah.
somebody's dominating, or somebody's getting all the care and attention, and other people very quickly kind of feel, well, this
What's
isn't
the
doing
point?
it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the point? So being rigorous about sharing the time and making sure that everybody gets some support every time you meet.
Right. And I'm just going to build on that as for my final thoughts is that when you give each other the equal time, just because it's their idea or it could help you too. There's something
Wow.
in right?
Yes.
There's something
Yes.
in what they got for you as well. So like
Yes.
you're really not giving up any time because it's something everybody has something to share that's also for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, because these ideas are kind of
They're
universal.
universal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, thank you very much, guys, for listening this time. We'll see you in a couple of weeks here. Of course, connect with us on our social media. It's at Maeve Langford is her handle, and mine's at the Frontline Resiliency Project. And love to see you guys out here again. Thanks again for tuning in. It's been an awesome episode this time. It was so good. There's lots of stuff there. I hope you guys got some value out of that. I appreciate you all. And like I say, check Maeve out. She's got a lot of stuff going on in Ireland. If you're in that way and you need a good coach, she's the one to go to. She is the person. She's that
Thank you.
person. So, anyways, thanks guys. We will see you guys in 2 weeks.
Have a great summer.